The 21st century belongs to Asia, but how do we make it India's century? To help us navigate this, FICCI and McKinsey have proposed a pathway to India Inc. and policymakers. The aim is to increase India's per capita income sixfold, achieve 600 million jobs, double female participation in the labour force, cut carbon emissions and provide clean water for all by 2047. Well, those are ambitious, audacious goals. For more on how we get there, we're joined by the outgoing president of FICCI, Sanjeev Mehta, the incoming president, Shubhrakant Panda, Anish Shah, vice president of FICCI, and Alok Kshirsagar, the senior partner at McKinsey. Gentlemen, appreciate you joining us here on the program. Sanjeev Mehta, as I pointed out at the start of the program, 50 areas that have been identified as potential game changers that could change the landscape, the complexion of the Indian economy. Many of these ideas have been on the table for a while now. A large part of the success will depend on execution, and the execution challenge is often where we have faltered, Sanjeev. To start with, the identification of these areas of priority, 50 in number, that FICCI and McKinsey have put together, but more importantly, the execution roadmap.
Sure, Shireen. You know, a time comes when the world conspires to make someone wins. And I think that time has come for India. And if we look at from different lenses today, whether it is a fact that 1/5 of the world's working age population will be in India, or whether you look at it from a lens of manufacturing, there is a very clear, all the global firms are looking at building resilience in their supply chain. Yeah, or you look at it from the way India has gone about digitizing its economy. Clearly, the ground is there for India to realize its potential. I don't think there has ever been a time when India is so well positioned to realize its potential and go away from a developing and emerging market and become a middle income country. And so with this perspective, McKinsey and FICCI, we started looking at what do we need to do from the lens of private sector. And so the important bit is this has started with the lens of what the private sector needs to do. And then we asked ourselves that what should be the enabling things which the government would like to add to ensure that the private sector does what it sets out to do. So that's where we started. And you know what we are talking about, if you look at the last 3 decades, India has delivered a growth of 6.5%. And now we have crossed the 3 trillion mark. And if we were to deliver 7.7% growth, which is not something out of realm of what India can deliver, then the objectives of lifting everyone out of poverty is increasing the per capita income by 6x to 1 million. So these are the things which can be delivered. So we picked up 10 areas and which we thought where we could focus on and make a difference. For instance, we picked up manufacturing. What do we need to do? Consumer tech. Then we looked at information and communication technology, financial services, healthcare, infrastructure, and so on. And then we thought that there should also be certain enablers to make this happen. And if I just pick up one enabler to set the conversation going, is one of my favorite subjects is innovation. You know, India as a nation, we need to move up the value chain. And to move up the value chain, we will have to be competitive on cost, service, quality, and very importantly, innovation. Today, when we look at the number of patents filed in India, it is very minuscule when you compare with the US and China. And one of the things which is really lacking in the country, we do not have the ecosystems for innovation. So one of the things that FICCI McKinsey report has looked at, and we believe we should be taking a lead in implementing, is in setting up innovation clusters where public sector R&D, private sector R&D, startups and academia come together. So we have picked up 3 areas to begin with. Yeah, one is renewable energy, the other is EV, and the third is water. And we will
Hmm.
first pick up renewable energy and prove it that this kind of setting up cluster, innovation cluster, can really accelerate the innovation, bringing in new technology, and very importantly, commercializing the technology. And then we
Hmm.
will move
Hmm.
to other areas of innovation. So this is how
Right.
we have looked. Yeah. So that's the kind of differentiator, if I may say so, looking at it first from a lens of what private sector can do rather than looking at what the government can do. And the government we have looked on as an enabler.
And that's where I want to stop you, Sanjeev Mehta, because I'm glad that you said that this report is focused on what the private sector can do. And so before we talk about the medium and the long-term objectives that the report sets out, let's address the short term. Now, there is a
Yeah.
common refrain from government that, look, we have done the heavy lifting when it comes to capex. We have front-loaded capex in the hope that it will ensure that private capex also picks up. That has yet to happen. In fact, the chief economic advisor going as far as to say that if the government continues to spend as much as it is spending on capex, it will lead to higher rates. Now, Sanjeev Mehta, I want to understand from you, what is holding back private investment at this point in time? As you point out in your own words, the stars have never been aligned for India in the manner that they are today. You believe that India is best positioned today. Why then is the private sector hesitant to put fresh money on the table?
First, Shireen, I think it would be wrong to say that the private sector is hesitant. The risk appetite of private sector hasn't gone away. And I think everyone in private sector is clamoring to get growth. And when growth comes, all the other indices fall into place. Let me give you one example, which we often ignore. There was a lot of trapped capacity in the economy linked to NPAs. And then when through NCLT, you get released, this trapped capacity, you're talking about close to 8 lakh crores. That's the kind of trapped capacity which was there. Now, this should be taken into account when you look at the net addition of capacity. And this will change the scenario significantly. Yeah. And so I believe that if you look at during the COVID period, yeah, the capacity utilization was between the 60s and the 70s. Yeah. If India keeps growing at 6-7%, then I see no reason why the capacity utilization won't go up and people will start investing. A company like Hindustan Unilever has not shied away from investing because we don't look at it from a short-term basis. We always look at it from a medium to long-term basis. And so have many other
Yeah.
companies. But in the intervening period, I think the government did a great job. Yeah, of leading
Yes, the
investments
government.
through the capital expenditure of the
Yeah,
government.
yeah. Absolutely, and it continues to do so. And now with capacity utilization rates between 70 to 80% across different sectors, the expectation is that we will start to see a pickup in private investment as well. But Shubhrakant, let me address what we heard there from Sanjeev Mehta. He said, in terms of actionables, there is now an attempt to try and create innovation ecosystems, and the focus areas are going to be renewable energy, electric mobility, and water to start with. In terms of financing, Shubhrakant, not just for these three specific areas that the FICCI McKinsey report have outlined as the start of creating these innovation clusters, but the larger spends on R&D, because that again has been an area where government has constantly asked the private sector, don't look at us, look within to say what is holding back R&D spends. Is there likely to be a shift? Are you seeing that change within your membership as well on spends on R&D going up?
So that's a great question, Shireen, because, like Sanjeev said, and I would like to reiterate, I think, innovation is something that has to be emphasized if India is to actually leapfrog and achieve its full potential, because the days of Jugaad is behind us. We have to look at being, competitive globally, and to do so, we have to take the lead when it comes to innovation and R&D. And I have often made the point that, when you look at Make in India, I think the government has done a great job in terms of creating an enabling environment through ease of doing business measures and PLI schemes, etc., to attract global supply chains to India and give a boost to manufacturing. But eventually, I don't think we should look at only making in India. I think we have to look at innovating in India and designing in India if we are to truly move up the value chain. And in that context, when we, just to expand the question a little bit, when we look at the manufacturing sector, for example, in the FICCI-McKinsey report, and we say that there is given the shift in global supply chains, India has a potential to capture between 800 billion to 1.2 trillion of trade flows by 2030. That is going to happen only if Indian companies take the lead in terms of wholeheartedly adopting digitization and software-enabled manufacturing and looking at partnership with academia and tech companies. So yes, I believe that the shift towards greater R&D spend is happening, and this is something that has to come, sort of almost as a self-calling, instead of looking at R&D merely as something to be done if we have tax advantages, tax breaks, for example. Now, I'm not arguing against tax breaks. I think that's important to have to encourage R&D spend, but companies have to realize, and I believe are realizing, that we have to look at R&D spends and innovation in order to achieve India's full potential, be it in manufacturing, be it in any other sector.
Well, let me get Anisha to comment on that. And since, the focus of this report also is on enhancing India's manufacturing competitiveness and ensuring that India does benefit from the reshaping that we are seeing as far as global trade is concerned. Anisha, India will become the magnet of manufacturing. This has been the aspiration for over a decade now. And yet we have seen that the share of manufacturing to GDP has not really changed significantly over this period. In this context of building resilient supply chains, people are looking at alternatives, and India has emerged as one of the possible areas where not just tier 1 manufacturing, but perhaps tier 2, tier 3 manufacturing as an alternative or a backup to China is also being considered at this point in time. Where do you believe more work needs to be done to ensure that this time around the aspiration is in fact a reality?
Shireen, a lot of work has been done on this already. And this is an area where I would give a lot of credit to the government for the policies they've put in place, for the logistics infrastructure that is being set up. And we are really looking at automotive to be a key sector where Make in India becomes huge. In India, we've got domestic car manufacturers winning against everyone else. Why can't we do that around the world? And many of the policies coming in place now, as we think about not just where we've been for ICE cars, but even for EVs, will facilitate that. You talked earlier about investments being made. And from the private sector, we are seeing a lot more investments coming in. At the Mahindra Group in particular, we are doubling our auto capacity. And in addition to that, we just announced 10,000 crores of investment for electric vehicles. And that is really around first Make in India for India. And then beyond that, we'll start looking at Make in India for the world.